Jackie, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today, and hopefully the listeners and the viewers that we have will enjoy this conversation as much as I'm going to. I know we got connected by Caitlin, and I think we are just talking about it, but who we both know through Strategic Coach. She connected us, which I was very happy to be connected with another person in that community. So thank you very much for agreeing to spend some time with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to give you whatever insight I can into my physiotherapy whirlwind.
Okay, so I think that's a great place to start. Let's talk about, you know, your physiotherapy whirlwind. So, like, how did you get into physio, and then where are you at now? Like, what are you doing day to day for your business, and tell us a little bit about that business.
Okay, so how I got into physiotherapy is a little bit different than where I'm at now. I originally thought I wanted to be a teacher. I was doing an undergrad science degree at Guelph, and I wanted to be a science teacher. So I decided I would start to work in a high school with some grade 9 students as an educational assistant. And that was interesting. I was learning from that. I was at the same time also trying to decide about doing a master's, and I had a neuroscience focus. So I only bring that up to give you a little bit of a look inside that I am a bit of a science geek. And really what happened was my stepfather was going to physiotherapy. He had some low back pain, and he thought it would be interesting if I came along. And really up until that point, I'd never considered physiotherapy as a profession. And I went with him, and I continued to go with him through the course of his treatment. And it became really, really obvious to me quickly that this was a profession that did allow me that kind of teaching skill set. I enjoyed teaching, but I got to marry this science kind of geek person in a way more applicable kind of fashion, like where you'd see the results of that science. And I always laugh a little bit because, the reality is someone in pain was way more receptive to my recommendations than my grade 9 science students were anyway. So maybe I actually thought it was a bit more rewarding too. So that was really what opened the door for physiotherapy. So I finished my degree at Guelph, and I went to MAC for their postgraduate physiotherapy program. Um, During that time, I actually worked in the physiotherapy industry. I stayed at that clinic, and I volunteered with her. I actually worked some administration. I did some marketing. The only thing I hadn't really done was be a physiotherapist. So when I went to school, I really had quite a tunnel vision that that's what I was going to do. I was going to have my own practice. So I graduated, and within 6 months opened my own practice, which is a little bit unusual. I don't even know that I would recommend it, but that was my path, and that's what I did. So obviously, started to work as a physiotherapist, and I don't even know how to summarize it, but let's just say, here we are 25 years later. We have 10 physiotherapy clinics that are in 8 different cities. I've grown this physiotherapy business for sure. But what I think is really been interesting is the profession itself let me marry that with being an entrepreneur, because physiotherapy is not a stagnant profession. It gives so much opportunity to try new things, learn new programs, and in my case, fill those niches in the communities with a service that can help people. So 25 years later, I don't personally see patients anymore. I stopped seeing patients maybe 6 years ago. I do some volunteer work in the community where I do treat people that way, but as far as actually treating people within the practice, I don't see patients at all anymore.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing quick start you had. So, yeah, 6 months in, you didn't know what you didn't know, which makes it really easy to start a business.
Yeah.
I know what that's like. And looking back, we wonder if we knew what we know now, would we have ever done it? So good for you for how do they say, burning the ships?
Yeah.
6 months in.
And I'm not a quick start. I'm actually an 8 researcher. So it was not necessarily in my natural tendency, but again, that 8 researcher, I had already done all of the other jobs apart from being a physiotherapist. So, I felt like I did have the knowledge. Of course, it was different when, it was my business to run it, then I realized there was lots more I had to learn. So,
So what was the most challenging piece of starting your own practice?
yeah, I think that the two things, I was really lucky. So one, from a clinical standpoint, I had mentioned that it wouldn't be my recommendation to open your own practice after 6 months of being out of school. 'Cause from a professional clinical standpoint, I think it's really hard to, you just haven't seen enough yet as far as seeing different clients. So for me, that was a challenge that was offset to some degree because my business partner at the time, he did have 5 years clinical experience. So he, in the beginning, really took that clinical leadership role. And as a growing physiotherapist, I was really able to rely heavily on him for that learning piece. And then the next biggest challenge was, we just opened a clinic. So while I had done, administration roles, I really, I found myself looking back to my grade 12 accounting book to think, what is a debit and a credit again? Looking at those things, here I have 2 science degrees. I've never done a marketing course. I've never done any business course. And, now we're opening this business. So from bookkeeping to, IT support, all of those hats definitely fell a little bit more heavily on me. And that was a challenge because, I was trying to grow my physiotherapy clinical skill set while at the same time trying to figure out, how I'm supposed to do all of these other roles at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that many times. So adversely to that, maybe you could talk a little bit about when you started, maybe 10 years in, and maybe now. What has always excited you about the business, and has it changed, evolved, kind of beginning, middle, and where you are today?
I mean, for me, what always excites me is, again, this very cool research that backs physiotherapy. So if I think back to in the very beginning, I used to like to treat the shoulders. So shoulder pain, people would come in, I would treat them. I like to treat them because they'd lift their arm and they'd be like, "Oh, that feels better," and that made them feel better, made me feel better. And then because of that kind of science part of me, I would go and look at that research body and see, well, what's out there? Like, why am I getting people better? And, from there I would recognize, well, if I add this exercise program, or if I add taping, or if I add acupuncture, then, I could get even better results. Um, and then I started to think, well, why is every physio clinic not advertising that they treat shoulder pain? Because clearly physio does wonders for this problem that is so common. And I think what excites me is, there's no shortage of looking at the research to find out what physiotherapy can help. But what excites me is putting it out there, like developing the program, that how are we going to market it? What is it going to look like? Are we going to name this program? And I look at all of these top areas that we treat, which, shoulder, back, knee pain, um, you know, I guess it would be 20 years ago, I started a pelvic physiotherapy program, which looks at the treatment of incontinence for male and female. And at the time, I was like the only physio in Guelph that did this, even though the research was so supportive of it. So what excites me is that ability to put it out there. So I feel like from the beginning, that's been the case. And, to this day, like I have a Q1 strategic clinical project that I'm still finding new things and, things to put out there. So that part I don't think has changed. Obviously what has changed for me is that I was the clinician actually providing the service. And that's a huge change for me because obviously our team has grown, and what I feel like has changed is my ability to recognize that often someone else is going to do it better than I if they have that as their focus. So I feel our company is really unique in that we have what we call associate roles, where, as an example, I'll have a physiotherapy in charge of the pelvic health program, that we look at the research and collaborate together, but it's up to her to mentor the physiotherapist. It's up to her to create, whatever kind of papers that we need created for clients. And what I found is that exponentially grew all of those programs, because there was only so much time in the day for me to do that, even though I really liked it. I also recognized that I was very good at coming up with the idea, looking at the research to say, hey, this is going to work. We just got to get the message out there. Who's really passionate about this area, that it can be only their focus. So that's what's changed for me now, is that I'm not the one that's actually providing the physiotherapy service anymore, but I am incredibly grateful and work really hard at creating a structure that attracts those professionals to come and be part of our team, so that they can not only mentor other physios, but they can be leaders in each one of these programs. I'm not sure if that completely answers your question, but I think that that's kind of some of the differences from the beginning to the end.
No, it definitely did. It sounds really exciting seeing that kind of transformation from, therapist to entrepreneur full time. What do you think the drawbacks were of being both for so many years? And knowing what you know now, would you have tried to make that shift sooner than a few months ago?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the shift could have been done sooner. I think the drawback is time. I think that the drawback was my personal life really was not, I didn't have a lot of family time or myself time carved out. I would have been definitely by definition a workaholic, which again, getting back to strategic coach, that's why I'm still there. But I think that what was important, I felt for me personally, is in the beginning, when the team wasn't as big as it is now, I really felt that each one of us as owners needed to also be leaders in the profession. I didn't want to lead the business through a business model. I wanted to lead the business through a clinical model. So if I was going to, really push a concussion management program, I wanted to really understand, well, how does that look clinically? Because I don't necessarily want to suggest a rollout of a program that really practically isn't feasible or doesn't get the results that we're looking for. So definitely in the beginning, in part when the team was smaller and professionally we're kind of all growing at the same speed, it was nice that we all were kind of hands on deck. And to this day, I'm the only partner that doesn't treat actual clients. So it's nice that I have a really great peer group when I am coming up with these ideas, or we come up with these ideas together, that clinical piece doesn't get lost. Because I think that sometimes if a physiotherapy clinic is owned by a business person and just has physiotherapists working there, sometimes that can get watered down with a financial goal versus it being a clinical goal. So I do think it was important, based on the team that we had at the time, that we were all participating in the clinical piece. But then as that team grew, I mean, now the credentials that are amongst that team, I think far exceed my own physiotherapy credentials. So I feel super confident in them being the professionals that are providing the service. But could it have happened sooner? Probably. But that's kind of like giving up. Actually, I had a patient say to me, and I do think about her every once in a while. When I was sort of announcing that I was retiring from seeing clients, she asked me where I was going to get my positive energy from. Because when I'm treating people and they're getting better, people are grateful. And she said, you're not going to get a lot of that in your new business role. she's right. Like, more often than not, on a day-to-day basis, I'm kind of dealing with people's problems. So, I'm not getting that same positivity from clients, but I know I'm getting that positivity and excitement about that research aspect, and putting something out there and then seeing, wow, like that really grew. And, people really did want that service, because service is now, a bigger revenue source for us. And, 2 years ago, we didn't even offer it. So it's nice to, get that, I guess, satisfaction out of filling that niche, versus just having a pure business goal and saying, I want to, and, I'm not minimizing that. Like every business has to have business goals, but our goals have always been with a strong clinical focus.
Okay, that's great to hear. So on the business side of it, then I think it's a good segue. Seeing that you lead with the clinical purpose and focus first, how have you thought about kind of from the beginning, and what's your thinking now after many years at it about the clinic's ability to get new customers or to keep customers, and sometimes we have to think about the business side of it. How has that worked from a customer acquisition or lifetime value of clients? Like, how do you view that in your business?
Mhm. Again, for like this was all new language in the beginning, and I really didn't think about that in the beginning. But I am a researcher, so I do collect data, and I'm happiest if I'm like smothered in Excel sheets of looking at things. So that's been a great strength for me to rely on. And really, again, getting back to coach, and I think it's funny because they asked that question of me one day. They use the language of like, who were my top checks. And in the clinical world, I don't often think about people are writing me a check. Of course, they're paying for the service. So when I started to contemplate that question, I'm like, okay, well, where am I getting my top revenue sources from? And who's referring them? So in other words, what are my top body parts, and how am I getting them? So I didn't necessarily have those answers at the time, but I very quickly was able to manipulate my software system to get those answers. So I kind of observed it for 6 months of data collection. So in the beginning, I can tell you with certainty, 80% of our clients came directly from their family doctor. So that kind of speaks to the way healthcare was 25 years ago. Everyone went to their family doc. It was easy to get an appointment. They got there in a day, and the family doc said, you need physio, you need an x-ray, you need blood work, whatever the case might be. And I think lots of things have changed since then with just the delivery of healthcare. One of them is that physiotherapy as a profession is so much more well known. When we first opened our clinic in Guelph 25 years ago, we were the third private practice clinic. Now there's 15, but it's not that the Guelph population has grown by 15 times. That is how many more physiotherapists there are. So of course, people are much more aware of the profession. So now I can tell you with certainty, 80%, if not more, of our referrals come from clients that we've already seen. So that kind of blends with, what was the phrase that you used? A lifetime client?
Lifetime value of a client,
Lifetime
like how
client.
many times they come see you,
Exactly.
do they remember you, if they haven't had an issue in a year and now they have a new
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah, so 80% are lifetime client referrals. So you saw me for your shoulder, you saw the process that we went through, and in our world, we call our process putting you back on your path to improve health. So we did that for your shoulder. Now your knee hurts, and you think, do I need to go back to my family doc? Because like it'd be way quicker for me to just go see my physio. So that person's coming back, and then that person's telling their neighbor, and then we see this exponential growth in how people find us is through our word of mouth referral. And despite me knowing that for a long time, so probably the first 10 to 15 years of our business, I could readily tell you who the top 5 doctors were that sent to us. I knew the body parts, and I knew that those previous clients were a big they were in our top 5 all the time. But it wasn't until probably 7 years ago that we started to nurture the relationship, so that we did have some regular follow-up, that we could stay in connection to remind people that we are here for them, that they don't necessarily have to go back to their family doctor. They can initiate care with us because legally we are a primary healthcare provider, and certainly we're not minimizing anyone else's contribution. If we do need that extra support, we can send that communication on so that we can involve whoever they need involved in their care. But there shouldn't be a barrier to access us. They should know that they can come back right away. So we have several different ways that we do that now, so that we're staying in touch with our previous clients, because we know that they are our best referral source. So, how can we stay connected with them? How can we continue to, provide them with useful information that they genuinely can use to, better their health, or, even be proactive and not having to come back to the clinic. We want to provide them useful information.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. So where do you think the future of physio is going? Like, what's the next evolution as you see it?
Yeah, so I mean, so COVID has done lots of weird things to different industries, but
Yes.
prior to COVID, like my project again came out of a mentoring coaching session where someone said to me, "Can you do physiotherapy without touching someone?" And I kind of thought about that, and I'm like, well, yeah, because really, in my mind, there's three pillars to physiotherapy. There's exercise, which we know on its own will help everybody for 100 different diagnoses. Not everyone likes to do exercise, but it will help. Two is education, and three is that therapeutic touch manual therapy aspect of physiotherapy. So, can I do physiotherapy without touching someone? Absolutely. So, I started this process of launching a virtual physiotherapy platform. And technology, this is only like, 3 years ago. Technology at the time was interesting. It wasn't all that there. Like Zoom didn't have a privacy license that even complied with our PIPA healthcare, platform that was necessary. My licensing board was intrigued by my idea, but wasn't totally sure how I would go about it. And then literally 3 months later, virtual medicine is a primary way of delivering healthcare. So like that, technology did this. So we had secure platforms. All of a sudden, our licensing board had to allow us to do it. The insurance companies had to allow people to bill their virtual physiotherapy services. And that was it. Like that little project that I had, wasn't so unique to me anymore because the rest of the world was also doing it. But it certainly was a big springboard for us. And I do see that technology continuing to grow within the physiotherapy world. I'm not a big conceptual person, and I think that like a lot of other physiotherapists, think struggled with the idea of doing this virtual physiotherapy because they were worried about missing a component of that hands-on that they felt was really necessary. But I think you're going to see more and more technology, whether that's through like an artificial intelligence technology. I've played the game where I've put something on, and I'm escaping a aircraft from fire, and it's a software that they're using to teach flight attendants, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this would be so easy to have a client that can't, for whatever reason, access someone personally, put this like artificial intelligence, is that what they're even called, or
VR.
virtual, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, virtual reality thing on, and walk them through exercises that they were to do and stuff. So there's no doubt that I feel like that kind of technology will become more and more common in physiotherapy. I think the challenge is going to be the competency of the professionals that are using that technology, as well as the clients. That was continues to be a barrier that we see even with the virtual physiotherapy that we offer, is that not every client is that savvy, to jump onto Zoom. I mean, it's better because a lot of these people have had to do it with their family docs. So because they were forced to be able to do that, that learning curve has happened.
Mhm.
But then, of course, there's still glitches, right? Technology isn't completely smooth, so that often causes problems during treatments too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. I agree with you on the VR piece in the future.
Mhm.
It's going to be interesting to see where that, how that plays a role in our life. I think whether people want VR to enter our life or not, it's going to happen without our permission. So, if we can be at the
Yes.
forefront in our businesses, then, that's a good step.
Well, not to completely date myself, but my business partner, I literally remember the day that she said, "I thought this Google would go away," and I'm like, "Google is not going away. we
Uh,
need we need to embrace this."
oh my gosh. Truth be told, my team had some Google issues this morning with our platform. So, maybe today they wished it would be, but generally I agree with you. It is not going away. So, I have a question about your clinic as we're starting to wrap up. What would you want someone that has never been to your clinic to know that
Mhm.
has an issue?
Um, yeah, I think that it stems back to what I talked about earlier. I would want them to know that our priority is to deliver excellence in physiotherapy. Our first priority is clinical care, and we achieve that through really conscious efforts. So we have, as part of our processes from start to finish, we have that as our foundation. So we're looking at the research on a regular basis. We're mentoring our physios, new physios, skilled physios on a regular basis. We are looking at a program and implementing a service not because it's the cool thing to do, because we've said no to a lot of kind of cool things to do, but if we're going to implement a service, it's because we know that there is good level A evidence to support that service. So when they come and access that care, they should have the confidence of we've spent the time to know that the care that we're offering has the best research that we can find, and that the people that are delivering that care, if they're not a leader themselves, they're being mentored by a leader, because not everyone's going to see the concussion associate, but anyone that sees any of our physios know that we have a concussion associate, which means their job is to mentor our physios that treat concussion patients. So we're not just setting up programs to, generate revenue streams or to create marketing tactics. Those programs become the mentoring that keeps all of our professionals, staff working towards the goal of, getting them on their path to improve health. We want them to, meet their own personal goals without feeling like, we almost don't want them to feel like it is a business. Like, we are in a private healthcare delivery for sure. People are paying for their services, our services, whether it's through their insurance company or whether it's through out of their pocket. But we want them to recognize that our priority is that healthcare piece first, versus achieving a specific revenue target.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess lastly, a bit of a fun question, and I'll give you an either or. I'm
Okay.
wondering if you've got a favorite book or a favorite productivity hack, or you could share both. It's really up to you.
Yeah, I was thinking about, when I hear the word productivity hack, it's not really anything very cool. I think it does stem down to, I'm the most productive when I'm doing something that I love to do. So I get asked this at lots of career fairs and different kind of forums. Ultimately, you gotta do what you love to do, and we all have things that, in order to do that, we sometimes get pulled into those areas that we don't like to do. But if you're able to develop a team that supports you, you're going to be absolutely the most productive if you're spending that time just doing what you like to do. And I feel like I, for the most part, have that groove. I don't like IT. We have an IT department now. I don't like human resources. We have a human resource manager. So I feel like I've, really tried to delegate as much as I can so that I can spend the time, doing what I like to do. um, I definitely have read a ton of books, and I feel like the one that makes me and I've given it out to clinical managers, and maybe not everyone needs it, but I needed it at the time. And it's How to Win Friends and Influence People. So
Okay.
for me,
Great book.
yeah, like for me, the title kind of sounds a little bit maybe cheesy. And it wasn't about the sales piece. For me, it was a really neat book to give me some pause. And again, I'm a science person. I tend to be a bit black and white. I often minimize, not on purpose, but I often minimize that psychological aspect of any type of interaction.
Mhm.
And I remember in that book, there was a whole chapter on remembering someone's name. And I was so mortified reading this chapter, because if you were a client and I saw you at the grocery store, I would remember how you hurt your knee, where you were, who was with you. But you think I could remember your name? And when I read that chapter, I thought, oh, that's not at all, the message that I want to give that person. So for me, that book just made me have some real deliberate efforts, because they don't always work. I mean, it's still something that I struggle with to this day. I have to have all of these games to remember someone's name. But I do recognize when someone remembers my name, that it automatically gives me a personal connection.
Mhm.
So that's one part of that book that for me, I felt really helped with establishing rapport, because I think establishing rapport is really a critical piece to any type of business relationship or marketing strategy. Really in healthcare, it's how you get people better. If you can't establish rapport with your client, you could be the best professional there is, but you need that rapport to be there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. As I mentioned just before we, started recording, that this year is about me learning as much as I can about the health and wellness industry. I've spent some time working in it and supporting it, but this year is pushing where all the efforts go into this industry over the next year or two.
Mm.
And so I'm on a mission to learn more about what it means to be in the industry and its struggles and challenges, and talk a little bit about getting customers and lifetime value and marketing, and hear the nuances of every entrepreneur in it. And you've given me all of that today, which is awesome. I have a feeling I'll probably reach out to you again in the future. So please think of something that I could do for you, so that way I don't have to feel guilty when I do.
Okay. I
Um,
don't think that that'll be a problem.
Okay, good, good. Yeah, so yeah, we'll have this posted, like I said, next month. And for all the listeners, how would they find their clinic? What address do they go to? How do they find you in the clinics?
Yeah, so our main address is www.eramossaphysio.com. So E as in Edward, R-A, M as in Mum, O, S like Sam, A, physio.com. And that would be probably not my best marketing venture, because that's the name of the first street that any of our clinics that our first clinic was on. And here we are in 8 different cities where the word Eramosa means nothing to anybody, but that is our main clinic site. And on that site, you'll see some unique sites that we have where we're on campus at the University of Guelph within the Health and Performance Center. And we have a unique women's health clinic that offers more specialty services for women's health, and that's called Guelph Women's Health Associates. But they can all be found under that banner or their individual websites. But that would be a good starting point. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm pretty easily reached through any one of the sites. They know how to get a hold of me. So any messages can be left really anywhere.
Okay, and I'll link up all of those in the show notes so people can find it much easier.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it was nice to be able to chit chat. And like I said, I'm very curious to kind of see other people's perspectives too. So I'll definitely want to get the link to the end product.